stopped counting after 5 years. It's kind of crazy that it's been 9. And you know, I definitely appreciate the work of Bill Wolf and Dr. Bay for kind of paving the road for companies like AAS and people like us, you know, doing this type of work. It's really awesome that they were there kind of, you know, on the forefront. Disclaimers, these are all my own stories, all my own opinions, all my own rants, whatever. Don't take it out on AIS and potentially our clients. And again, all views are my own, stories, claimers, whatever, and it's up to you to find your own way in life, but maybe this will help a little bit. All right, this is a beautiful work of art here. You know, artists, it typically takes a few hundred years to, you know, sort of let them become ridiculously famous. Anybody familiar with this artist? No, okay. It's not a Picasso or a Van Gogh. This is about 7 or 8 years old, and I didn't truly appreciate this until Jake asked me to speak on the hacker mentality, and I saw this hanging up in my parents' camp. I had done it at camp one year. And I realized, I'm like, this thing's a mess, but this was a paint by number. Like, I made a mess of this thing, and like, I remember people, or whoever gave it to me, explicitly saying, you know, you take the numbers, you can kind of see the lines here, the scan isn't great. You take the numbers and you take the paints and you fill in the lines. And, you know, I was able to understand that, but I was like, nah, I'm not painting the lines today. And this should have kind of been a flag, but whatever. So, you know, and it's great because you guys are all here and you're doing something, and Jake and the team have provided an awesome opportunity for you guys to not paint the lines. All right, so this is really great stuff. So where to start? Hacker mentality. Again, not painting in the lines. You know, somebody says, don't stick a knife in the outlet. Well, I want to see what's going to happen. Let's stick a knife in the outlet. Why not? Before you can even tell me why not, I already got the knife in the outlet. And, you know, what if I got scissors that got some plastic or a wooden paintbrush that I used on my paint by number? Then can I do it? You know, and maybe it'll work. Give it a try. So, you know, I was kind of, a few times Jake has asked me to speak, and it's been these kind of open-ended things that I can't really put in a bottle. So I was struggling to, how do we define the hacker mentality? But, you know, I thought this sticking a knife in the outlet was definitely a great direction. Bill Wolf gave us a kind of great history of some of the early hacks, and that was awesome. I hadn't seen some of that stuff before. The term hacker, it's kind of cloudy, but I like to go back to the MIT Model Railroad in about 1946. And these guys were building model railroads, but it wasn't really about the model railroads for them. You know, they spent a little time on scenery, but it was about this control system. And they were using a lot of the telecommunications, surplus telecommunications gear from the old phone networks to drive these ridiculously complex model railroad train systems. And there was no documentation, there was no user manuals. They were just kind of figuring this out and doing hacks to make things work in this model railroad. You know, there was no GUI, there was no buttons, there was no clicking. Like, they were on command line interfaces, like building this stuff from scratch. It's really awesome. Unfortunately, over the years, the term hacker has become synonymous with criminal activities, breaking into things, stealing things, pirating software, or whatever. And that's sort of unfortunate, but you know, we can still use it amongst ourselves for, you know, the hacker or whatever. But you know, I wouldn't go home like this Thanksgiving and be like, I'm a hacker, and we get locked up or whatever. You know, more friendly terms, computer security practitioner, maker. The maker space has grown significantly. You know, so whatever, computer security professional, things like that. But it doesn't really matter. The hacker ethos runs very deep, and the mentality is very strong. I forget, this year at Black Hat DEF CON. Anthony, do you remember how many people were there this year? Was it like 15,000, 20,000? I mean, this industry is ridiculous. And DEF CON, same deal. I mean, this is grassroots, hardcore people breaking hardcore things. It's really awesome to see, you know, it evolve and come along. And I'm sure for Bill and Dr. Bay, you know, they've been in the industry a little longer. To see where we are now from where you started in '95, whatever, it's pretty amazing the work that has been done. So we'll go here to a little bit of a general approach to hacking. This is 3 steps, so obviously it's significantly harder than that. But when you first approach a system, and when I say system here, I mean anything. It's not just a computer, it's not just an Android device, it's not just a router. It could be a business process. It could be, you know, the DMV, how do you get through this system faster? But any system, the first thing when you approach it, when you're coming in from an adversarial mindset is, how is it supposed to work? What are the assumptions? How did the designers build it to work? How did they expect people to go through the system or data to go through the system or whatever? Once you understand what it should do, then it's straightforward, or not straightforward, but you can start taking the next step to what it shouldn't do. All right, and start kind of theorizing and asking questions like, well, what if I did this? Or what if I threw a bunch of data at it? Or, you know, what if I sent a really big packet? How's it going to handle that? But the key is, I mean, oftentimes I see people, it's like, I just want to attack. It's like, no, you got to figure out how the system works first, and then we'll attack it. Don't just hit the attack button all the time. All right, figure out how the system actually works. How does it actually function? And then, you know, you can start to find new things that are new hacks, attacks, whatever. And when you're looking for the how to break things, consider the sequence of steps that's required for something to happen. All right, you know, there's always some logical progression of how something must happen for a system to function. What if you do something out of order? You know, what if you throw a bunch of crap at it? Large data, you know, large packet, small packet, changing number versions, all of that stuff. That's where you start to formulate these questions and determine how you can break it. All right, what else? Inherent roles, responsibilities, privileges, things like that. Any questions so far? Okay. So, some non-technical examples. All right, dumpster diving. This is kind of taken from the social engineering context. When, you know, me as a user of the garbage can, I throw something in the garbage can, and in my head, the next stop is the landfill. All right, it's gone. Garbage is gone. Obviously, as security practitioners, we know better than that. What really happens is I throw it in that garbage can, someone takes it out to the dumpster, someone then takes it to a transfer station takes it somewhere, takes it to the dump. And in all these spots, there's place for someone to get a hold of the data I put in that can. All right, so if I throw, you know, something with sensitive information on it, whatever, you know, that can be, you know, someone can get a hold of that before it actually hits the landfill. And dumpster diving, right? So the assumption that's being violated there is that my garbage doesn't just go to the landfill. And an unsecured dumpster with sensitive information in it, someone can jump in. Another assumption, you assume people aren't going to jump in the garbage, right? You know, it's dirty, right? But there's sensitive information there, and so that's why, you know, you see the shredder industry booming, and we're on a much more strict shred policy, things like that. So, you know, there's a system, and as simple as throwing out the garbage is, there's assumptions that can be violated, and there's data that can be gained. All right, someone could potentially find an org chart, start to formulate a social engineering attack to call you and be like, I'm the president of the company, change my password right now or you're fired. All right, and that's working for it. Piggybacking, all right, piggybacking, we have a door that has locks, only authorized people with the key can go through it, right? But when that door swings open, there's a little thing to make it slowly close, and that door's open for a split second. And if you have that key, there's an assumption that you have some level of diligence that you're the only one going through it. So piggybacking is, you know, someone gets through it authorized, and you just sort of follow them into that room. People are often not mindful of what's going on around them. We're very busy. So, you know, very straightforward. And the assumption is, you know, only authorized people will go through, and people will pay attention to the door. It's secured for a reason. But, you know, it's a very straightforward attack. And physical access trumps a lot of security controls that are technical. Okay, technical examples. Improper input handling as illustrated by XKCD. Anybody familiar with XKCD comics? Pretty awesome, right? So, SQL injection. This is the little Bobby Tables comic. Hopefully I can get you to a point where you understand it if you don't know SQL injection. When you go to your bank or when you fill out some form or you mail something or whatever, there's a web form, all right? And it says first name, last name, address, state, city, zip code, whatever. The designer or the developer of that web interface assumes that you're going to put your name in. They assume you're going to put your address in. And it's going to be Rick, and it's going to be whatever, Main Street. And when you put that into that form, that ends up in what's called a structured query language query that's run against the database. So you take Rick and you drop it into this query, and that's run against the database. The web designer, early on at least, people have gotten significantly better at this, didn't perceive people putting in SQL code into that web form. So here they're saying, is your son's name really Robert drop tables question mark? And that would delete the table in a database. So someone is putting database code into the first name or last name form, that's dropping into an SQL statement that's being run against the database and deleting all the data. And they're like, oh yes, little Bobby Tables, that's what we call it, right? And it's like, okay, well I guess that's his name, but we've lost all the records and I hope you're happy. And, it says, okay, I hope you sanitize your data. Okay, does anybody have like a quote, a single quote in their name? Right, so that's some fairly straightforward programming logic up front that can say, if there's a single tick in my first name, it's probably not good input, and it probably shouldn't be run against the database. All right, so the early assumption was the user is going to write their name in there, and then the security assumption that was violated was, I'm just going to put SQL in there, and hopefully it runs against the database, and it does. So when you hear of hackers, or let's call them crackers or criminals, dumping entire databases, this is one approach. You could, instead of deleting the table, you could say, give me all the data in this database. So when the news is like, 40 million credit cards were stolen in 30 seconds, like it's really, if it's this attack, it's pretty straightforward. All the data just dumps out, right? And then more recently with the heartbleed bug. All right, so kind of the very simplified discussion was, this was in an encryption library. Encryption is when you go to HTTPS with your bank and all your account information and passwords, all that stuff stored. Some kind of important stuff. And there's a heartbeat sent back and forth. If the remote end or the side you're communicating with confidentially is not up, you probably want to close that connection so there's heartbeat back and forth. And so the heartbeat was, give me this word back, and you give me the word back, and I know you're still alive. Okay, so it's like, give me back hat, and it's 3 characters long. And you give me back hat, and it's 3 characters long. And the assumption that was violated, because there was no checking in this code, was give me hat, it's 500 characters long. And the program overran into the memory, grabbed a bunch of potentially sensitive stuff, and sent that back to the remote end. All right, so the assumption that was broken there was, okay, it's hat, it's 3 characters, but they didn't do any checking on the length that was passed in. All right, does that make sense? So XKCD, awesome stuff. Hopefully you learned something from that. What else? But you see kind of the approach. How does it work first? How do we break the assumptions? And this can be applied technical, non-technical. I'd love to see somebody use it for like the DMV or whatever. I'm not picking on the DMV, but man, that is a process that needs to be broken. So how does this apply to innovation? Even if you're just, not just, but if you're building something, or your job is to focus on building a network, or building software, or building some new IT solution, or whatever, we need to have that adversarial mindset as to, how is someone going to try to break this? What are my assumptions, and how is the attacker going to try to flip that on me? All right, so it's key to have that when you're in the engineering process. Oftentimes this is called abuse cases. So we'll write our use cases, right? Like the firewall should let HTTP packets through. But what's the abuse case? The attacker is going to use HTTP to push through malicious covert communication. All right, so I need more scrutiny on that attack. So that has the adversarial, or kind of the breaking the rules mindset, has direct impact on the building of things. What else? I kind of banged out these slides quick, so I don't remember what's in. Yeah, we got to that. Maintainability, right? So, not only secure, but is it maintainable? And that's huge from the innovation perspective. Is if you're building something that's complex, or you're just doing it to be complex, how is anyone ever going to come back and fix your code? All right, so that's important as well. And there's tons of stuff. There's libraries, there's design patterns. Use these things. People have spent a lot of time thinking about abuse cases against them. There's libraries that people have spent a ton of time vetting and making sure that are secure, even though OpenSSL was an amazing library that's been around for a long time. But software is hard. Things happen. All right? Some cautions. All right? This one took me a very long time to learn. I had a lot of detentions in life. It was very rough, but I got through it all. Sometimes it's hard to turn off this painting outside the lines mentality. It's hard to kind of not focus on everything and how can I break everything. All right? Someday you'll find yourself in the real world working with grown-ups. All right? Everybody in here is awesome, so you know it's cool to break rules and it's kind of accepted, but there are grown-ups out in the real world that like things done a certain way, and I like to go back to the lock-picking golden rules. This is literally lock-picking, and that's kind of a hacking type sport. Don't ever pick locks you depend on, and don't pick locks you don't own. So this goes for your hacker mentality. Don't try to hack your employer, right? Whether it's their system, their computer systems, their process, whatever. I mean, you can ask questions, don't be a conformist, but it's kind of a good way to focus. And I say here, practice some level of corporate survival. This stems from kind of an incident we had, not an incident, but I don't know. We have these all hands meetings where everyone's expected to be there and there's a lot of announcements and whatever, and everyone just shows up. And you can't bill for that time. You can't charge the customer to be at a place where your company's telling you about announcements. And so this one coworker of mine just went deep on the Department of Labor and the laws and the OSHA and like all this crap, and just went right up the chain and was like, you have to pay me, lunch isn't enough. It's just like, relax, man, it's okay, it's an hour, you'll be all right. And so it's like, I guess it pisses people off at points. And so you can focus your energy on cool projects. You only have so much energy, you only have so many brain cycles. Put it into really cool things. You're all here, so I'm preaching to the choir right now. The horizon. A lot of people are saying we're in an information or knowledge revolution, whatever that means. I don't suspect the bottom will drop out in our careers, so there's a ton of excellent future for us all. A quote from originating at Dr. Jabor via Dr. Bay when he was our chief scientist. This is very key, and this basically just means it's going to be a lot of hard work. All right, studying, working, researching computer security science is like researching chemistry, but the periodic table of elements changes every 10 months. Libraries change, software changes. I mean, look at Word, all right? That should be easy. And that changes, and they move that ribbon around, and I don't know how to bold. Like, that should be straightforward, right? But it changes like every few months because they want to sell you new products and things like that. Now, from a developer's perspective, it's even more challenging. These libraries change, functions go away, they work differently. Code just stops working. Who knows? But the point there is, this is hard work. Keep your sword sharp. Tim, how's it going?
Good. Man.
Good to see you. All right. So in closing, break rules, violate assumptions, question the truth. Hacker mentality absolutely applies to everything, but be respectful. Don't upset people. Don't hack systems you rely on, depend on. Don't make your parents angry, too angry. Anybody building or engineering or IT developers, anybody doing this, even managing the development of these things, make sure you're building things that are sustainable and maintainable. It's not a snapshot in time. These things have to be fixed as the threat landscape changes. Every day the threat landscape changes, capabilities change. We have to build things that are sustainable and maintainable. And unfortunately, the projector is only getting a portion here, but the CNY Hackathon is awesome. I think Jake deserves a huge round of applause, and everybody who's helping him, and everybody who's here. It's really key. You guys are definitely, painting outside the lines, which is huge. So my beautiful masterpiece. Everybody doing an awesome job this weekend. Put this on your resume because I care more about this than the classes. All right? I mean, the classes are extremely important. They allow you to do this.